So, welcome to, I believe, the final presentation of this year's iMoot. And it's a very interesting one to finish off with. We've got Tabitha, Miriam, and Miranda, who are going to tell us about creating engagement using the Moodle core activities, something which should be right at the heart of any Moodle course. So I'm certainly looking forward to hearing what they've got to say. So over to you, and let's go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, hi, I'm Tabitha.
I'm Miriam.
And Miranda.
We're basing this presentation on work we carried out together at Unitec Institute of Technology. It's a large polytechnic in New Zealand. The three of us were working there together, and we'll be sharing a lot of the conversation will be based on what we did at Unitec, but we'll also be sharing things we've learned from our other experiences. If you haven't met any of us yet, between us we have a range of expertise in different industries. We've worked in public and private training environments. We're working with Moodle partners, primary schools through to tertiary, globally, you name it, one of the three of us have probably done it. If you have been to a Moot before and seen Martin Dugamma's talk, you're likely to have heard about Martin's typical teacher progression. This is available on Moodle Docs. Put a link on the slide there. Martin describes teachers' journeys into developing and facilitating online courses. If you work in e-learning, you probably agree with a lot of the progression. And you're probably all too familiar with teachers who get stuck at step 1. They put up their PowerPoint slides, they put up some readings, they might put up the assignment requirements, but they never really explore the real power behind the LMS.
So at Unitec, the majority of the teachers are still at step 1, and this is the sort of thing that you can see in courses. There's a whole bunch of readings and handouts that are uploaded to Moodle. A significant number of teachers are providing a forum, but not really using it that well. As another significant number of teachers use the online assignment submission, often turn it in, but collecting online assignments doesn't mean you have engaging assignment questions, or that students are collaborating and co-constructing knowledge. Some teachers provide a glossary, either with or without entries, so it could be just a teacher glossary, which is then just a resource for the students, and less frequently a collaborative glossary where the students get to participate and actually put in some entries. There is we haven't really been able to identify teachers progressing to stages 8 to 10 of Martin's progression, and just to remind you what that is, it's back here. It's surveys, peer reviews, and conducting active research on oneself and sharing ideas in a community of peers. We can find rare examples of each of the stages by hunting them down and talking to the tall poppies we know are striving to push themselves and provide for their students. This is an example of one of the courses that we stumbled across on our Moodle site at Unitec, and that was all one course, and it's pretty much all resources. It's all uploaded files. So yeah.
Yeah. So what we found is that even a number of academic advisors, when they put up a course, even though the design of the course content and the ideas they have when they are trying to teach our teachers are wonderful, there's this tendency towards using a lot of resource with little evidence on how we ensure engagement or how we ensure collaboration. So even the people that are, you know, in the teaching and learning space and getting the best way across to teachers to handle the way they work with students are often not using Moodle optimally. Yeah. So, for example, in this course, the only, let's say, slightly more interactive things that are there are a forum where the students, which are staff in this case, can ask questions, or a lesson that explains about lessons. So it's that double, and we will explain further in the presentation why something like a lesson about lessons is something we stepped away from in the course we do about core Moodle activities.
So we can't just look at the stats, and we can just look at the stats, but we can't just look at the stats. We can count how many files and how many forums and how many assignments, but you've got to remember that that always isn't going to paint the full picture. You may find teachers are using resources as a way of delivering external modules or some cool interactive engaging material. So we can't just take it on face value, but for a minute we'll just take a quick look at the numbers. Unitech has a book module phenomenon. You'll see that there's quite a lot of books. This unusually high number is actually it's sort of a design flaw. It was used heavily across a program by some designers, and then they've applied this model as a template for course design and other courses. So it's unusual, and again, they're using that book module as a way of displaying things. So it's not necessarily just text on the page. It is sometimes embedding intercollaborative, engaging material in there as well, objects. Of the 9 activities that we've highlighted, if we think about the Moodle language where they talk about add an activity or add a resource, take a look at the highlighted high numbers there. 6 of them are what Moodle calls resources, and 3 of them are what Moodle calls activities. This suggests a very passive course design, where the student's the consumer of content provided by the teacher. Given that the forum count includes the teacher-only news forum, that's automatically added to every new course by default, you can safely assume the forum numbers are inaccurate. Using the raw unaltered data, this graph shows the use of resource modules versus activity modules in Moodle. Remember that we're not going into detailed investigations here. You might find some labels and pages are actually the collaborative embedded objects you have, and we haven't adjusted this graph to remove news forums or any other alterations, but you can see we're working in a pretty resource heavy environment. When we look at what is considered active activities, the highest used at Unitech, we see one there that's not core. That's Turnitin assignment. And we've combined questionnaire and feedback. We used to use questionnaire, and we've shifted to feedback as the new core, but we've got historic questionnaires still being used. And remember that forum, again, that forum count is including news forums. But we see the teachers are favouring forums, quizzes, and assignments. Forums we get, assignments we get, they're pretty easy to set up. and they sort of understand what they're for. Whether they're using them well is another question, but you can see that they're favouring those. The quiz, it takes a little bit more to set up, so that's an interesting one to see in high numbers, but we think this might be because the teachers see the benefits for themselves in terms of their marking workload, and so that could... there we go, here we go, teacher comment in the chat, time saving. It would be interesting to find out what other people do, what the stats are for other people's institutes, to know if this is typical. When we ran this the other day, one of the participants said that they have a lot higher number of choices in their institute, so that was quite interesting. We then wanted to tell you how our work contributes to Unitec's teaching and learning initiatives. So Unitec have identified what they call the key characteristics of a living curriculum, and then using those key characteristics, they developed a set of principles of learning and teaching. In analysing these, they found 4 key themes emerging. So they've got inquiry, discipline, autonomy, and conversations. It's too early in the morning to talk. You don't have to use Moodle activities instead of resources to achieve the living curriculum, but looking at these statistics gives us part of a bigger picture showing us where our teachers are at. And my screensaver just came on. Yes, so we can look at these statistics to get a better idea about where our teachers are at and how we can work to support their development so that they can achieve the living curriculum. If you attended 2015 iMoot, you may have seen us talk about Moodle standards and templates. So that was part of us helping the teachers on their journey towards this.
So next we come to a quote that many of you are probably quite familiar with in its various forms. Tell me, I will forget. Show me, I will remember. Involve me, I will understand. And I'm pretty sure I came across that when I went through Teachers College. And we put probably not Benjamin Franklin down there because including this quote led Tabitha on a little journey of trying to figure out where it actually came from. And if you want to know, ask her. It says, if interested, read blogs, because there seems to be a bit of confusion about where it comes from as well. But its sentiment is very true. We know from quite a lot of research that people have done now that if students are involved in the learning process, then they are more likely to retain that information than just being fed the information from the front of the classroom and passively receiving it. We know from living curricula work where we need our teachers to be, so now we need to help our teachers get there. Unitec introduced a practice passport as a suite of professional development for staff. We developed workshops and online resources which focused on developing activities that would involve students rather than just passively feeding them information. So in one of our workshops that we'll be talking about in a minute, we focus on core activities in Moodle because they're available in any Moodle setup anywhere. The skills are very transferable. There are some institutes where people don't have the ability or the access to be able to install lots of extra plugins, as nice as those plugins might be. And it's also about the pedagogy and not the fancy plugin. So you can have a million really cool plugins that do interesting things, but if your core pedagogy is not sound, then you're still not going to achieve the right thing. So you can do a lot with what's out of the box. And also the core activities are inside the control of the teacher, and they're not usually, and I say usually, restricted by the site administrators. There is also the ability to use and embed a whole lot of cool authoring tools and Web 2.0 stuff, but these can also be expensive or not very accessible or not allowed. So there might be JavaScript restrictions, admin rights, firewalls, and things like that. Whereas you know that if you build something directly in Moodle using the core activities, it's not going to be blocked by any sort of network or administration.
Yeah, so as a first initiative leading on to teaching users, teaching teachers in a session really how to use those core activities, we started building an examples database of really good uses of core activities that we saw across the Institute. So there were we divided it into activities, which were really the Moodle activities as they're called in the interface. Presentation options, which included course settings, how to use labels and pages well, sections, blocks, and then also teachers' tools, which are all the, let's say, back office things like completion tracking, activity reports, user management, using the gradebook well, how you can use the personal settings and then, involve your students in using them well to add to the overall experience. So we made a database doing that. And this is an example of an entry. So we made it quite extensive. So it became, let's say, an organized case study with a conversational way of writing. So it was easy to read for teachers. They're real examples of current practice, and we linked the documentation, and where we possibly could, we linked to the course itself after asking the teacher in question for permission, and explained the benefits it gave to the teachers and the students, and it also gives some advice on how easy or how hard it is to do this. So this is a, let's say, the entry page where you can put your entry in. So because we use database because it's
search page. Search page.
Not entry page. It's really early. So we wanted to make it easily searchable, and so that's why we had some very specific keywords that people could look at that had terminology used in our living curriculum.
So one of the other things that we did was we ran a Moodle for Collaboration course and workshop as part of our extended PD offerings. So this was actually a practical face-to-face workshop for teachers. So we did not run this online, and there's a very specific reason for that, which we'll get into. Initially, we ran this in our collaborative learning space, which is set up like it's a big space, and it has tables where people are facing each other in a group, and lots of big screens with computers all around the place where each group can then collaborate on their own big computer screen, and a master screen at the front for the teacher, and the teacher could then push out to all the other screens some things, and then so it's it's designed to be a space for people who are working collaboratively with technology. So it was really nice that we were able to run this workshop in that space. But we also ran it in regular classrooms where there was just the computer for the teacher at the front. We picked a general knowledge topic that most people at least have some prior knowledge of, rather than focusing on teaching and technical skills or making a workshop that was very based around a topic that was very academic, so that we could demonstrate good Moodle or online teaching practices to teachers and give them a student experience without them having to struggle with the actual topic or the content. So on topic 1, we started with checking what our learners know about the topic, with whiteboards or big sheets of paper to brainstorm words relating to the topic. There was a group activity to define the meaning of some of the words and add them to an online glossary. We gave them printed textbooks and permission to search online for more information if they wanted to. So not all of the learning content or activities were done online, letting teachers know we expect them to blend online and face-to-face, and that it's still good to use printed materials where relevant. We also got them to rate and comment on other groups' entries in this collaborative glossary that they'd then posted into as a way of giving student-to-student feedback.
So in this topic, we've got an example of how you can set the scene. So in the living curriculum, we talk about curiosity. So we want to encourage curiosity with this fun video. We want to ask a few questions that can lead into a group conversation on creative problem solving and get the students engaged before asking them to do some more in-depth research. So you can use a number of different core activities to ask questions, rightly or wrongly. In this case, it's the feedback activity that's been used. The good thing about the feedback activity is that you can do anonymous submissions, and then the teacher can share the results on the big screen, so that they've got the answers, so they can enable the discussions. It's quite good to do anonymous submissions because it helps if you've got shy students or it's the first time they've had to write something online. So the other good thing we've put in here in our little notes is that feedback activity can be used to gain prior knowledge. So it's not just an evaluation tool for post evaluation.
So yeah, one of our activities was also a database. So for those of you who aren't familiar with databases, they're like glossaries on steroids. You can have so many different options and templates and things like that, but because they're quite difficult to set up, like this, the learning curve for them is reasonably steep compared to a lot of other Moodle activities. And if you just set them up by adding some fields in and leaving them with the default template, they're also very ugly. And the templates are quite complex for those people who aren't used to working with an editor like the Moodle editor to create and move things around. So because it's such a complex activity, teachers often don't use it because they really don't understand how it can be used. We built a database to show how it can be changed to make the template more visually pleasing and interesting, and to demonstrate how flexible it can be, because databases are basically a build your own activity in Moodle, which I quite like. We talk about examples used in other courses, such as reading logs, student-created sharing spaces for pictures and websites, or databases that can act as student workbooks that can then be edited and commented on over the period of the course, because database entries, provided you've allowed that, can continue to be edited by the person who made them.
Another not very much used activity is lessons, because it looks very daunting and people also don't really always understand what they can do with it. So what we included was a branched activity with what lessons are made for. And so we asked the students a number of different questions that would make them end up on one specific planet on our solar system. So you see one question under there, we kept it very kind of not scientific questions. It's like, I want to be far from the sun, I want to be somewhere in the middle. Then there was something about color and something about temperature, and that was enough to make them end up on one planet. So it was aimed at providing content in an engaging way. So they're discovering facts about a planet in small useful chunks via a lot of branching. So because students end up on different planets, you can also use their ending place to group the students or to ask them to share with the class what they learned about their own planet. You can use lessons to break up content from readings and really give students a direction to this exploring, and use the buttons to let students really delve deeper into other things they want to know. So the lesson activity is really diverse and really good for inquiry and very autonomous learning.
So we actually haven't kept this example in the course, but the first time we ran it, we used the choice activity to divide the class into groups based on the lesson activity. So they could then, after having explored and learned a little bit about some of the planets, they could then go, yeah, I want to join the rock planet or gas planet group or whatever. So yeah, the choice activity can be used quite diversely, whether you're letting students decide what group they want to be in by their interest area or after they've done this initial engagement activity. You do need to design and configure your choice activity to meet the needs of the activity that you're trying to, to meet the needs that you're trying to meet. That's bad England. It's too early in the morning for this. Limit the number of you can limit the numbers in a group so that you can divide a class evenly. So you might have three groups of 5 if you've got a nice small class of 15, or you might have 10 groups of 10 if you've got 100. You can do this in the settings. You can keep responses hidden so that you can just keep them hidden until after they've chosen a group. So if you wanted them to separate out into groups and then work together, you would then unhide the names so they know who they're working with. But by keeping it hidden initially, they're not going to choose the group with their friend in it. You can also keep it anonymous forever. So if you wanted to use the choice activity for getting their opinion on something, you don't have to then have their names appear against their responses. You can restrict the answering period. So if you want them to have made their choice before the next class, you can say, right, you have to answer it before Thursday. That's quite a good way to sort of force them to respond faster. You can also show who hasn't responded, so the class can monitor for you and they'll tell their classmates to hurry up and reply. One of the things I particularly like about choice is it can be a really useful quick temperature gauge to get feedback on how a class is going. So you can ask a couple of questions, or one question, have you set the lesson at the right level, or are we going at the right pace? and it's not as overwhelming as using the feedback module and asking a series of questions. After every class. I advise people to use the choice activity early on in a course if they've got first-time online learners. It's got a low barrier to entry. It's not as confrontational as starting with write something personal in a forum that exposes you to the other classmates so that they can judge you on your response. Choice, you can still ask for their opinion, but they're only giving you a tick. It's nowhere near as tricky as writing. It also is much easier for students who are English speakers of another language who are trying to study in English. So they're not having to write a response, they're just choosing. It's a nice way to start a course, to start getting students engaged.
The chat activity is often overlooked, but it can be an excellent platform for student-to-student conversations, collaboration and problem solving, but also to have maybe a scheduled time where the teacher is accessible. Hang on, I'm just getting the cat off the table. Get off. One of the things you might see, and you might have seen in our previous screenshots, is that we have teacher notes on underneath each of our activities. So we put teaching notes and tips on the screen for this particular workshop. The participants keep access to the course after the workshop so they can go back and look at what we did. We also encourage teachers to bring another teacher from their team so that they can work together after the workshop to change their own courses with a bit of peer support, not only relying just on the academic advisor team to give them support when they need it.
So we also have a forum in the course which we really use to support collaboration. So it's not really for the discussion or the news like most people use it for. So we really use it as part of the rest. This is a forum to plan a wiki. So the chat requires the students to be online at the same time, but this forum solves the problem of trying to collaborate on an activity when you cannot be online at the same time. So it's useful for conversations that need to span the life of a project, documenting all discussions about what you're going to do, and the resulting decisions that were made, so they can look back on what they decided to put into the wiki, or who was going to write what, and so on. So it's a supportive discussion tool to organize a project.
So we love the idea of wikis, but they do have their limits. Moodle wiki pages cannot be worked on concurrently, so that takes a bit of management. It's possible to use. It does just require that you explain this to the students, to the participants, and you plan out your activities in such a way that you're not asking them to work on the same page at the same time. We've discovered that a limitation of the wiki is that it doesn't copy well, so you can't pre-prepare a template wiki, then duplicate it for different groups or cohorts, as all the content disappears, even the teachers' contributions. It sort of makes sense, but it's also sort of quite frustrating. We had a case of a particular course that used wikis extensively, and they put all the activities for all of the modules of the whole course. Like, they had 3 wikis, one with 12 activities, one with like 25, and another one with a huge number of activities, and each activity was a page in their wiki. They didn't realize that every 4 weeks when they duplicated the course, they would lose all of their pages that they'd set up in their wikis. They didn't realize that when they created all the groups, that all their wiki pages would not be there. So it does take a bit more planning on the teacher's behalf, and a bit more knowledge, pre-knowledge about how Wiki works before they can start using it with their students. But they are still useful. Wikis do allow the students to construct the knowledge the way that they want to, in a way that none of the other activities do. They can create pages as they want, so it's less limiting than some of the other activity modules.
So I will admit that when completion tracking came into Moodle, I was quite excited, because not necessarily because it was a way for the teacher to sort of big brother look at what their students were doing, but because students are more engaged when they feel in control, when they know exactly where they're up to and what's expected of them and what they need to do next. There's a lot of autonomy. The power is in the students' hands to track their own progress, and they have the autonomy and control to progress that on. The teacher can quickly get statistics on usage for the most relevant items, either by choosing which items are shown in the activity tracking, but they can also, through the reporting, get a report of all the items that have activity tracking in the course as well, which is quite nice, and it's activities and resources from the report.
So we have a big example at Unitec that unfortunately we can't show because it's for an external client. And the course has 3 big modules. It has a whole number of tasks and activities. The class size is quite enormous, so the students are divided into groups, and there's very little teachers to student face-to-face contact time. So the completion tracking as part of the picture, along with forums, activity grades, student contributions and assignments, was extremely valuable for students themselves to see where they were at, but also for the facilitators who worked with them online to see where they were up to in the long list of activities and what they might need support with. Initially, when Tabitha and I worked with the creators of the course and the people that were doing the facilitation, they had these enormous Excel sheets because the original designers, I think, did not show them the completion tracking. I'm not sure why it didn't happen, but so they had these Excel sheets where they were checking the students' activities in Moodle and then putting ticks for all the students where they saw that they've done. So once we showed them the completion tracking, it was like it saved them so much time that they could actually then spend on supporting the students. Now, also for the students themselves, it gave them a lot more visibility for their progress, because these are almost all students that work as well at the same time. So they would come in and out of the course and try to do as much as possible in their free time. So they could easily see where they stopped when they returned to their study the following day, and what they still had to achieve to reach all the requirements of an activity. So it was, it was really a fantastic tool for the teachers and the students in such a large course. We also, I also remember that Tabitha and I really redesigned some of the activities to work towards those completion criteria so they would be easy to track.
Yeah, like the wiki problem. Yeah.
So we don't always see feedback being gathered on Moodle. But where we do, it's often only at the very end of a course. Although the teachers may be gauging their students each week in their face-to-face sessions, it can be quite useful to collect written and well thought out, considered feedback. Asking students regularly to think about the feedback they would give. And this is one example of some feedback that can be used which is not too intense, but it gives you some idea of things things that worked and things that you could do to help improve the course.
As we work through our face-to-face workshops with our teachers who are our learners, and as we completed the activities during the workshop, we stop and we ask participants about how they find the activity. Is it easy, hard? Were we giving the appropriate amount of support? Was it useful? And then we ask them about what examples they can think of in their own teaching situations, how this could work for their courses, and what activities they would how they would use this activity in their own course. We want to encourage discussion about their own teaching, and we want them to share ideas and any challenges they think they might face whilst they were still with their peers. We try really hard to not get too deep into the technicality of how you actually set up the activity. We don't think that this is as useful as the conversation about the teaching and learning in this space of the workshop. We do provide them the technical support in terms of we have a guide to Moodle that we maintain for, online for them within Moodle. They also have Moodle docs and they've got videos that support them. But this workshop is not the space to be talking technical skills. We use the feedback activity to evaluate the session. We do it deliberately to show them how you can use the feedback activity, and we make that explicit. The feedback from these sessions is very positive. Every time we run it, it's very positive. The biggest challenge we have is to get the most out of the time we have with the teachers. Often it's 90 minutes, and we've shown you a lot of stuff. We don't get through that in 90 minutes. We pick things that we think are going to support the group that we have in the room, and you're seeing a few iterations of us running this workshop. But we try and do quite a lot of them so that they see core activities that they can try in their own class and have that time for conversation. The feedback is always that they would like more time. They want us to run a second workshop. Many teachers don't realise that various activities could be used in such a way, and they went away with new ideas that they could transfer to their own classrooms and online spaces.
Miranda?
Okay, sorry, my thing went from muted to unmuted for some reason. I know. So as for all courses, design is going to be integral. You have to think about how you want to deliver your course, what your student needs are, how to best meet those needs. So using showing to the teachers how to use those core activities and not technically just showing them what they do is really important in what we show them. So we really focus on that, as Tabitha said before, is how can this be used? How does this fit in the design of your full course? So you can put the most amazing activities and interactive tools in your course, but if it doesn't address the learning object and it looks crowded, confusing, and uninspiring, then the students may struggle to engage anyway, no matter how many different engaging activities you try to use. It all has to fit together and really focus on the student needs.
So thanks, everyone. We really hope that you can take something useful away from this presentation. We'd love to hear any questions that you might have, and hear how you manage your own workshops and staff development. If anyone would like to share that, thank you.
Thank you so much for